What's up, everyone? Welcome back to a brand new What's New in Cinema 4D and Redshift live stream. My name is Elly, and I'm joined with the very special and amazing Jonas Pills. How's it going, Jonas?
Hey, thank you for the nice introduction. I'm doing good. How are you doing, Elly?
I'm doing good. It's good to do a stream with you again. It's been a little bit, hasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been a while.
It has been a while, but this is a special one today because we have some news today. We have a all new release, not just for Cinema 4D and Redshift, but across Maxon, including some very cool new products as well, which we have other live streams for happening just after this one. So make sure you stay tuned on the channel and watch those directly after this, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, there are going to be download files in the video description. So yeah, I would just say let's get this started, right? Let's show a couple.
Let's get into it. Yeah, because you're going to kick things off with some of the new features of C4D. I'll then take over for some stuff in Redshift, and then we'll do a little bit of a back and forth. And as always, those of you watching us live, thank you for being here. Please let us know your questions in the chat for us. We'll do our best to answer them for you. But yeah, it's great to be here with you all again.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna grab the screen. And yeah, let me just start with the first feature. And that is a feature called Fabric Brush. And yeah, Fabric Brush is a tool that allows you to combine the power of the simulation tools with the power of the modeling tools, because yeah, it's a tool for modeling. And yeah, you can find it here in the mesh menu, and you go down to move and then Fabric Brush. I'm just gonna undock this here and just place it here so that I can always go back to it. So this is a tool that is perfect for all users who are working in architectural visualization, especially interiors, as you can see here. So what you can do with it is basically pieces of cloth that are lying around here or hanging around. All these kind of things can easily be done using the Fabric Brush. But also it's great for people working in product visualization for, let's say you have a product and you want to have it in a clothy environment. You can use it in Visual Effects, Previs, for graphics, for creating characters, all these kind of things. So yeah, let me just get into it and show you how it works. So it is a modeling tool, right? So it's working on polygon objects only, right? And when you select it, you can see that we have the tools section here. And here we have a couple of modes. So basically, you would just drag here, and this is what happens, right? You can move this around. You can see that the cloth is self-intersecting. I'm just going to undo this and just do a little bit here. And you can see in drag mode, it's just going to grab one piece or one area of the cloth and just pull that somewhere. We have different modes. Another one would be brush. And I'm going to bring down the strength a little bit. And with the brush, you could just go in here, and let me go up with the strength a little bit more again. And you would just go through the cloth and create a path of that. It's updating the grab position based on what you're doing with your mouse cursor. We have rotate as a mode. So let me just make this a little bit bigger. And you can rotate. If you hold down the control key, you would rotate the other direction. Then there's swirl, where you would have the same behavior as with a brush. So you can rotate, but also it's updating the center of rotation based on where you are with your mouse cursor. We have contract and expand. So here you can just contract to create more creases. And if you hold down the control key, it will just do the reverse and just expand. And yeah, I also like wrinkle. So if you go here and let's just say we want to add some wrinkles here, you can just see that there are a couple more wrinkles here that are making this appear to be more detailed. So this is basically how it works. Of course, there are modes for smoothing and detangling. Every brush, also the wrinkle brush, if you hold down Shift, has a smoothing option as well. And this is basically how it works. So, but then as the next step, let's try to hang this towel here onto the hook. And I'm just going to reset the positions. As soon as you start creating something here or like modifying it, it will create this little tag, which will store the initial state. So I'm just going to reset the positions. And now let me use the move tool and just bring this closer to the wall. All right, and now I want to hang it here. I also want to make sure that I'm gonna make this collide with the wall, because by default you would just go through the wall. But with the fabric brush selected, when you go to simulation, there is a field here, colliders, right? And here we can just drag and drop the objects in that we want to collide with, right? And now I can go back to drag mode and just make this a little smaller, like so. Yeah, something like that. And now I'm just gonna pull this up. And another thing that is really cool about this brush is that if you hold down the G key, it will activate gravity. So now it is falling down, and you can just place it close to the wall here. As you can see already, I'm a little bit too much on the left, but it's no problem because it's a modeling tool, so I can just move it to the other side, and now I could tweak it further. But this is how you would create a towel that is hanging from a hook. I have a couple more scenes here. I have this one, for example. And here we want to, adjust the t-shirt a little bit. So again, I'm going to take the fabric brush, and I'm going to go to simulation because we want to make sure that we are colliding with the whole body here. So I'm just going to drag and drop the whole subdivision surface object named male in here. So now it's colliding. And we are in drag mode. That's fine. We're going to select the t-shirt, and I'm just going to drag here a little bit. And again, I'm holding down the G key so that it's falling. And you can see that we're creating a couple of creases here. What you can do now, actually, I'm going to lock this here. What you can do now is you can set the positions to set a new default position, right? And you can also set the constraints. This will make sure that this is also the starting point for the simulation. And another thing you can do if you want to create like more detailed wrinkles and folds, then you can go here to the subdivision section and just hit subdivide. And now when I use the drag brush again, you can see that, that there are like more detailed creases. And of course we can, now go around the whole character and just add a couple of creases here, right? All right, of course you can spend a lot of time on that. We don't have a lot of time here. That's why I'm going to move on to the next one, because I want to show you another thing that is very important. So this is loading a couple of assets. They are Xrefed from the asset browser. And by the way, if you didn't notice, with the last release of Redshift, this wasn't just a giant release for Redshift with Redshift for ArcViz. It was also a giant release for our asset library. So more than 4,000 assets have been added to the asset browser, which is just amazing. And all the assets that you see in here are from there. You can just add them as sets. So it's very easy to use them. So what I want to show you in this one is how you can restrict the effect of the fabric brush. So let's just select the fabric brush, go to the tool here. Let's reset the drag mode here. And I'm going to go here. Also, one thing that I shouldn't forget is in the simulation settings, we need to collide with the table. All right, and now I'm just going to drag this up, right? And then I'm going to drag something up here and hold down the the G key for gravity, and you can see that it's not just affecting this part that I'm actually working on at the moment, but it also affected this part. And if you want to restrict that, you can do so. I'm going to undo this, and yeah, let's keep with this one. So what you can do is you can switch to point mode. And in point mode, I'm going to create a rectangle selection here of, let's say, half of this tablecloth. So I'm going to hold down the 0 key and just drag a rectangle selection like so. And yeah, if I now zoom in and let's say I use the grab brush to move this to the side, and I'm activating gravity here, you can see that it's not affecting the other side there. So here I have quite some tight collision radius. That's why. So I was a little bit too fast. So let's do this again here, and let's do something like that, and done. Okay, so gonna put it like so, and now you can see that this is my result. So this was affected, and this has not been affected. Okay, let me undo this this whole thing here, so that we are down on this side. Okay, and there is another way of restricting this tool, and this is by using either a point selection or a vertex map. In this case, I created a vertex map already. It's looking like this. And if you want to use this, there's a special naming convention that you need to keep in mind. So the correct naming convention is __, then fabric restriction __. So this way, I think we found a name here that you might not use if you're just trying to come up with a name. All right, and now when I grab this and move it up, you can see that it's actually like stopping here. Also, when I drag in here, you will see that, yeah, I cannot drag from here actually. So this is another way of restricting the effect of this tool. Yeah, and yeah, this is actually a really great one, as I mentioned, for everyone who is doing visualizations, for designers as well. Yeah, and character artists, of course. All right, before I hand over to Elly, let me just, I'm already going to remove my screen here. One thing that I wanted to mention was also that with this release, we are supporting WinARM devices. So Cinema 4D is now ready to be used on WinARM devices and Redshift as well. Just that you know, if you have a WinARM device, you can now use our tools on it. All right, and with that being said, let me hand over to Elly. I'm gonna add your screen to the stage here.
Cool, thanks, Jonas. I love that fabric brush. I've been playing around as well, doing some like product viz still frames, and it's just, yeah, it's really fun, really cool to use.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, cool. Let's talk about some new things that came into Redshift. And recently that was a new night sky feature where we can create really cool effects, like create the moon, we can create stars in the Milky Way, we can animate time lapses, all that kind of stuff. And it's found, so this is just a little version that we're going to create now. It's really nice and simple to set up. And we're going to do that from scratch. So it's all found within the existing sun and sky rig. So let's just kick this off. So we can see we have within this sun and sky, this new night sky option. And just a quick sort of reminder, this gizmo in the middle, this is still going to control the sun. So what we can do, as we know, we can rotate this down so we get a nighttime scene. As you can see, doesn't really look like a nighttime scene, right? What we kind of expect is, because our moon and our stars and everything else is enabled, we would expect to see them. The reason we don't is actually because of the default exposure within the camera. So in order to see them now, we'd have to really boost our exposure to quite a high level inside the camera, which we probably don't want to do because it's also then going to impact everything else in our scene, right? So what the team did was they incorporated non-physical intensities for things like the moon intensity, the stars, and the Milky Way intensity. So we can now adjust these ourselves, which is why we don't see anything straight away. It's just due to the exposure. And so before we actually adjust those intensities, I want to talk about the position modes first of all. So inside the night sky, this is the position of the moon, which has a direct impact from the sun's position because the moon is actually lit based on the sun's reflection. So knowing the moon's position and the sun's position is going to have a really big impact. And we'll take a look at how the sun actually influences it. So we have time and location. Of course, we can come in, we can adjust the time and location of our scene, just like we can with the sun. So we also have these position modes added to the sun as well. So viewport widget, which is what we're using at the moment, again, time and location, so we can match these, and altitude and azimuth. We also have directional vector. This allows me to control the X, Y, and Z direction or position of the moon. My personal favorite, and what I've been using quite a lot, is altitude and azimuth. And my reason for that is I find it's really just user and artist friendly. And that's the method I'm going to show you now. So what altitude and azimuth are is we have the degrees for the vertical and horizontal position of the moon. So what I can do, this is my tip for you. I set both of these to 0 degrees. And what this means is within my little gizmo, we have this arrow, right? So this is pointing the direction of the sun. So if I kind of like spin around, you can see a value of 0 and 0 in altitude and azimuth is going to be basically opposite to where the sun is. And so we can use already this gizmo, which we know we have for the sun, to almost be pointing where my moon is. And this is one of the things that I found was a really nice, easy way of getting started with how to find the moon. Then from there, we can adjust the look, the size, the intensity, and of course, then the degrees on the vertical and the horizontal. So now we kind of see it. We can see it in here. It's like teeny tiny, right? It's teeny tiny. So we can adjust things like the intensity and the radius. So let's pull up the radius. We have this nice little slider here, so we can see it's getting bigger and bigger. This goes to a value of 50. I'm just going to set this to 30. And again, what you'll notice is it actually then disappears. And that's because the size of the moon and the intensity are really, really important. The smaller the radius, the lower your intensity can be, and you'll still have your moon visible. But if you increase the radius, you do need to make sure you also increase that intensity to be able to see that moon and have that moon visible. So now what we can do, we can adjust our altitude and our azimuth, so we can adjust our vertical. And so you'll see it goes behind the horizon, right? So the horizon line is still also important, just like it is for the sun. And I can sort of adjust this and I can move this round and we can start to see our nice little moon in there. And so, like I said, the position of the sun is very important and has a direct impact on the look of our moon. So if I go to my coordinates, because still, again, this gizmo is controlling the sun, isn't controlling anything to do with the night sky. And if I rotate around on the RH, so this value here is going to rotate my sun around, we can now see how much this is having an impact. And so this is the sun we're moving, right? Nothing to do with the moon. This is how we can see it has a big impact on the look of our moon just by adjusting that rotation there. A few more things inside of here is, of course, our stars and our Milky Way. So, of course, we've created our nice moon. It's looking great. We've positioned it where we want. We've got the intensity and the radius where we want, but we don't see our stars. And the same rules apply due to the exposure of the default camera. So we can just pull up our stars intensity and you'll start to see the stars in my scene. And I can do the same with the Milky Way. And if I just come out of my camera here, we can see as we look around, we can see those lovely stars and of course that lovely Milky Way in our scene. We can enable and disable the moon. So let's say you just want this starry backplate, you don't want the moon in your scene, then absolutely that's fine. We can disable that. And also with the stars as well, we can disable that. So you have a lot of control as an artist, how you want this scene to look. And again, remember, we do have those other position modes if you want to be looking at time and location as well. And you can create and animate like a fun time lapse this way. A couple more things that we can talk about are these contributions inside of here. So really quickly, let me add a landscape. We won't make it too interesting, we'll just make it a little bit bigger, pull up, down. Okay, so we've got our little landscape in here. Let's just up some segments a little bit. And in here, as I boost the intensity, you'll see we actually get light from the moonlight, as you normally would. So we're able to light our scene this way. And then our contribution are the ray contributions, just like in a lot of different lights. We have the ray contributions for things like diffuse, subsurface scattering, reflection. We can actually control the visibility, the lighting, and the volume contribution of our night sky or our moonlight. So if I reduce that intensity back down, and then maybe we could push these up. So we have our visibility and then we have our lighting. So you saw the visibility boosted the visibility of my night sky. So our stars, our moon, all that kind of stuff. And the lighting, which does a lot of our diffuse lighting, we're able to light our landscape. I personally don't really like this way of increasing and boosting the lighting. So I'm going to push this back down. I'm also going to push back down the visibility. But what I did like is as I boosted the intensity this way, it gives me a more accurate looking lighting. Our shadows are much nicer and the light from the moon is much nicer. But I'm sure we can all agree, this now doesn't look very nice. It just looks like this really bright, white thing. We don't get those really nice craters, that nice detail of the moon. So I'm going to show you a little trick, right? Where we can actually do both of these things together. So let's set this back down to how we think the moon looks nice, intensity of 40. And then we're going to just duplicate this and we're going to call it moonlight. I'm going to boost this back up. Again, to a point where we're not looking at this, we're looking at this now. So we don't really care that this looks like that because we're going to fix that. But we do care about the lighting on our landscape, our mesh, our object. Insert object here. So in the moonlight, under the details tab, if you've worked with Redshift, you've worked with Redshift lights before, you'll know we have these individual contributions for the different ray types, which means we have control of these different things. And so if I actually just remove the camera contribution, we don't see that not really nice looking moon because I've removed it from the camera rays. But what we do have is the diffuse contribution having an impact on my landscape. So this is a little trick for you to have the nice moonlight, which you can now control via this intensity, whilst going back into the sun and sky to control the intensity, which is controlling the overall look of your moon. So lots of cool things that we can do. But as Jonas said, we don't have too much time. So this was a nice little kind of brief introduction to the night sky and sort of how I personally like to use it, looking at that position mode, that altitude and that azimuth that allows you to really sort of dial in these values. In my opinion, a lot more, artist friendly. If you kind of want the moon in a particular place, we can adjust these values. Okay, so let's move on because there's other cool things that we have, of course.
Absolutely.
And one of these things is procedural dome light shading. Yay!
Yay!
Yay.
Oh, it's actually really
little like clap sound effect, don't we?
Yeah.
So this is a very cool feature, something that people are really thrilled that has been released. really cool stuff that we can do with procedural shading now within dome lights, including procedural backgrounds, which I'm going to show you as well. So I'm going to kick this off. You might recognize this from a stream that me and Ian did a few months ago, looking at, some fun product visuals inside of ZBrush and C4D and Redshift. And I'm going to show you how we can set this up. So I'm going to switch off all my lighting, and it's going to look not very nice. And this is found within the dome light. So we're going to add a dome light in, and normally or traditionally what we use a dome light for is we apply a HDRI into this path here. Then we rotate that HDRI around and we get some really nice image-based lighting. It's a really nice way of lighting. I love using it quite a lot. But what we now have is we have the additional option to not use a HDRI or use a texture, and instead use procedural shaders like a Maxon noise or a ramp to really get our own procedural lighting in a scene. So the way that we do it is this little button here, add graph. So I'm in the dome light. I'm just going to click that add graph option. And then within my materials, it does a few things. It creates what's called a RS dome light material. And mine's just called 0.2 because I've got a lot of other dome lights in my scene. And it also automatically adds it onto the dome light. If I just double click this, it's the normal node editor that you're used to. We have our output and we have our dome light here. And the most important thing that you need to do is, if you're not going to be using a texture, which we're not, we're going to be doing procedural shading for this, we need to, within our map source, just make sure we change this to shader. And now what we can do is we can double click, we can search for a node, for example, the ramp node, and we can connect that into our shader. And now you can already see how we have this gradient that is now affecting my scene. And we have the procedurability, that's probably not a real word, but it sounded really cool as I said it, where we can come in and we can adjust this ramp and this gradient to control our lighting. And what I've done in this scene, because I've already created this scene, I added a quick AOV, so a render pass, just specular lighting. The reason I did that is just to show you in a bit more detail what this light's doing. So obviously with the beauty pass, you can get an idea of exactly how this light looks, but just into specular lighting, this isn't a rule that you have to do. This is just me showing you on stream. And as I sort of pull in these handles, we can see that we're able to get, again, control things like the mapping and just have a bit more control over the lighting within our scene. So we can do a black, white, black, including, of course, if we change the color, we can incorporate some color this way. And it's just a very great procedural way of additionally adding lighting into our scene. And like we said, we could work with a Maxon noise if we wanted to. So we could throw a Maxon noise in and we can start to get some interesting gobo-like effects. And if you've worked with a Maxon noise before, you'll know how unbelievably powerful it is. So you can come in, you can really get some interesting lighting in your scene this way. But like I said, it's not just lighting. We have to think outside of the box sometimes with these features. And more often than not, a lot of the time I get asked, like, Elly, how do we make procedural gradients for a background? Right? That's always been like a common thing. How do we do it within a dome light? And originally there were ways of doing it. It was a little bit convoluted. So a lot of people would just create a gradient and throw it on a plane on the background, right? That's still a great way of doing it. But now what we're able to do is, if I just bring back my scene, remove the color. So at the moment, this color is controlled through my Redshift camera. So we now have this plain black background, and I've added a dome light here. So this is exactly what we just looked at. So we've added a dome light. I've just named it background. I added the graph, and that's this one here, which is connected to it. I'm going to switch it on. And the difference that we have is I've got the camera contribution set to 1, so it's visible, but I've got my diffuse contribution and my single scattering and my GI set to 0. So this means this dome light isn't affecting the lighting in my scene is only visible from the camera, in my reflections, and in my transmission, which is important because we have this transmissive or sort of clear plastic material.
It's looking pretty cool already, actually.
It's like a little heavenly scene. And so these are what we're able to then do. So it's exactly what we spoke about. We have a Maxon noise that's being colorized by a ramp. Plug that into my shader, and we can see we have this Maxon noise in the background. And so we could then come in and we can adjust the seed, or we could adjust the noise type itself. And again, this is just being colorized with this ramp. More procedural effects that we have is the tile shader. I love the tile shader. You have so many cool patterns that you can use to create your own textures. But in this case, create our own cool backgrounds. And I've just changed these colors. You can change the scale, all that kind of fun stuff. And of course, exactly what we spoke about, having the control of procedural backgrounds. So we have a ramp here. We've got the two colors. I like a little bit of noise just added in here just to create this variance here within this background. And so we no longer have to worry about creating our own textures, creating our own gradients. We can do all of this procedurally within here, whether it's procedural lighting, just like we looked at before, or like that gobo effect with a Maxon noise, or this method where we've reduced some of our contributions and we just use it as a background. It opens up a lot of really cool possibilities for us now.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe that. Yeah, the background workflow is actually really good and really powerful.
Yeah, that's where I reckon I'll be mostly using it, because I love the HDRI method as well. I think it's a really cool way of adding like quick lighting. But yeah, the backgrounds, just to have some really cool like procedural or flexible control is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I believe I'm gonna grab the screen back, right?
Yes.
So let me just do this. Here we go. That's my screen. So there are a couple more features that I wanted to show here. And yeah, one thing that I wanted to bring up first here is this little animation that I created before the release. And this is showing basically what you can now do with yeah, just a single bend deformer. So let me just move this away. So we added some new options to the bend deformer, and those would allow you to create mirrored bends with ease. So it's way faster and easier to set up. And yeah, let me just show this to you. I have this bend start scene here. So this is actually the geometry of the shot that you've just seen. And here in the bend deformer, we have this new origin parameter, this drop down, right? And yeah, this is the default behavior that you are used to from the bend deformer, right? So it starts at the bottom, but now we have a drop down here, and you can also set this to top so that you can just bend from the top. You can also set it to center C shape, which I like a lot as well. This was this is something that I'm using quite often these days. And also, and this is actually my favorite new addition here, it's the center S shape, because this is like creating two bends in different directions. And when you play with the angle and animate that, you're already creating a pretty cool movement here. And as you can see, this is a really great feature then for modelers, for MoGraph artists, for animators. So there are just a couple more options that you have here, and yeah, just with a single bend deformer. All right, so these are the bend deformer updates. And let me go to the next scene. And this one is a more complex feature that I want to show here. Complex in terms of where you would use it in a workflow. So what I'm talking about is an Xpresso node that allows you to define command line arguments for rendering using a render manager. And what you would use that for, or what it has been built for is actually, it's enabling technical directors at large studios to automate the creation of render variations without opening Cinema 4D. So it allows creating design templates that can quickly respond to changes in fast-paced production environments, right? So let's say you work at a broadcaster and you want to render, let's say, 20, 50, 100 lower thirds, right? This can be a way of doing that you're creating a template, and then in the render manager, like Deadline or Royal Render, you would define the output variables, or set the variables so that with every time you render, it will create a variation of the scene. And let me just quickly show this to you here. So I have this title defaults. Actually, we don't need to have this window here. So this is just using the defaults, right? So it's a little animation, and we have first name, last name, we have a company, and this one has 3 stars, right? But then I created another one for Elly, right? And I gave Elly 5 stars. And 5 stars is and I also created one for myself, and I was asking around, and people were saying, yeah, come on, give yourself 5 stars as well. All right, so how can we set this up? As I said, using Xpresso, right? So here we have the setup for the first name, right? And basically what I set up here is that in the text spline, you would drive the text spline parameter. And here in the command line tab that I created using user data, I define the name of the argument, the name of the variable. All right. And the way I set this up is actually pretty simple. I'm just going to delete the Xpresso text so that I can show you how to create this from scratch. So you just right click and you go to Programming Tags, Xpresso. And now here we need the text spline, right? And from the text spline, I'm just going to navigate to here. I'm just going to drag and drop the text spline parameter here. So we want to drive the text spline. And we want to do this by using a command line argument node. So basically, usually this one is folded, and then you unfold it, you go to Xpresso, script, command line argument. And if you use this node, and let me just click it, you see there are just 2 parameters. One is the name. This can be first name. And so I'm defining the name of the variable. And then I can define the default value. So in this case, I can just type in Elly, for example, and I connect the 2. And once I connected them, you can see that it is saying Elly. But if I render this scene now using a render manager that is supporting command line arguments, I could just say for the rendering, first name equals Jonas, for example. And then it would render it like that. And yeah, the same thing basically I did for the stars. So here I just have a cloner in grid mode, because grid mode is creating clones like in a centered way. And I'm using 3 by 1 by 1 stars in this case. And if I have a look at the Xpresso, it's a couple more nodes, but basically I'm using the command line argument node. And then I'm clamping the value. So even if you type in 10, for example, you would get a maximum of 5 stars. Then I'm making it so that this value is going into the x value of the count parameter, and the other 2 are filled with 1, and then I'm going into count. So it's not complicated to set up, and it's very powerful. Also, just as a little side note, we had this node in our C nodes environment, and I created the last name using that. So it's more complicated, or it's looking more complicated than it is actually. So this is a text spline object, and I'm just outputting that. But in addition, I'm using the command line argument and a letter case to enforce uppercase letters here. And that's basically it. The rest is just the inputs that I then defined. And when I click that, I'm having like a text spline object on steroids, because here I can now define the case and the argument name in here. So this is basically the setup. So I'm not using Deadline or Royal Render or any other render management software here, but there is a way of showing this to you through the terminal. So I just made myself a command line. So this first part is basically open up Cinema 4D command line render, then render this scene, then render the result to this path. And then here is the interesting part. First name equals Sina, last name equals Ma4D, company Maxon stars 5, right? And if I just copy paste this into the terminal, and let me see if I already have the terminal open. I just put that here and press enter. It will start the renderer in the background. And then here in a second, you would see that the Sina M4 file is being created, and it's still rendering. So this one is set up for speed. It's around 80 frames, 75 to be precise, but it's taking like 40 seconds to render. But in the background, it's using the variables that I just defined. So I didn't have to create or to open up a Cinema 4D file to create that variation. This can be done by everybody who is managing the rendering pipeline, like the TD, the pipeline engineer, and it's just going to work. Give it a couple more seconds, and I think now it's done, right? And now I can just play it back, and now we have next on stage Cinema 4D from Maxon. So yeah, that is command line, the command line argument node, which is very powerful. As I mentioned earlier, this is something for like bigger companies that are having the need for a lot of automation. But what you could do as well is you could render animated bar charts with that and define the values like in the render manager, something like that. This is also cool. All right, there's one last thing that I wanted to show before I hand back to Elly, and that is this conveyor belt scene. And what's so special about it is one new feature, one new checkbox actually in the target effector. So the target effector is an effector that allows you to have multiple clones pointing to the very same point, right? So you can set up an object and all clones are pointing towards that object. You can make objects point to the closest point on a spline. You can also make clones point to the next clone or to the previous clone. And that's what I'm doing here. And the challenge with that before this release was that this was optimized for open spline setups. And now we added the loop checkbox to make sure that it's also working with closed splines. So before it was like that. So the last one was always open and you had to work around that. And now you just hit the checkbox here and it's just working like a charm. And I did the same here with another scene. Here I added some, I created some chain elements and then added them up. And if I go to the target effector here and just untick the loop checkbox here, you can see that now this thing is open. And of course, it doesn't look like it's right because it isn't. And here in one of the last frames as well. So this is also a scene that you will find in the download files. Remember, we are having download files here. So just make sure that you are going to the video description and download them. So yeah, this is basically what I did here. I also made a compositing here of this shot. And what I did here, just to tease it a little bit, there's going to be a stream about it in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to open up Autograph here And so this is the composition. What you can see here basically is, yeah, the whole compositing being done inside of Autograph, right? So this is the final render. I added just a little bit of lens flare here and a little bit of color correction. But basically the way it works, when you select the layer, you have this inspector up here. You can see that real lens flares is also working in Autograph. Basically, all the OFX plugins from Red Giant are already working in here. Also, a couple of other plugin vendors are being supported from today. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's for free for individuals. So yeah, there's absolutely no reason for not trying it out. But that's enough of the teasing. Watch the next stream with Chad and Max. And with that, I'm gonna hand it back to Elly.
So this is such a nice looking shot, by the way.
Well,
for something that on the surface is like a checkbox in an effector, to have made such like a stunning looking scene is yeah, a special skill.
Thank you. I'm gonna give back a compliment.
I didn't make this one. Right, cool. So let's get into the last few things that we're going to talk about, which is a couple of extra updates that came. And I'm kind of like universally doing them as material updates, as sort of like 4 small little things, and then another 4 small little things for texture displacement. So the first thing is, this is really handy for if you're used to working in large scale scenes. This is a scene from the asset library. Unfortunately, you know, I'm not as talented as Jonas to make a stunning looking scene like this. But yeah, I saw this great scene from the asset browser.
Hey, I didn't make this scene.
The reason I did is because it has loads of objects, and it has, as we can see in here, loads of different materials. And as we know, sometimes when we want to find a material for an object, it's a case of having a look, finding the object itself, which again can be a task in the objects manager, and then finding the materials that are connected to it. Well, you may have noticed this active object filter option. And basically what this is, if I select an object and then I go to active object, this is now going to filter out and only show me the materials on the object that I have selected. What's even better is if I then come in and maybe select an object in the viewport, if you'd rather work in the viewport because it's a little bit, you know, maybe a bit more user friendly than finding it within the objects manager, we then get again active object filter, so we can see that and we can come in and we can maybe, you know, adjust our material nice and easily this way. So this is one of those 4 new features. The next one is all, again, like we said, based around materials. If I go back to...
If I may interject here, there's one little cool tip that I have for this one. So many people are using, like in the object manager, right-click and then select children. But in case you didn't know it, if you middle mouse click like a group or an object that has children, it will select the object including its children, and this way you can see all the materials of a whole hierarchy, which is also very nice.
You were testing me then because I'm using my pen. I wasn't sure if I had it set up, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try. And it worked. I have it. I have set it up, thankfully. Cool. Good tip to know. Right. I'm going to show you the other material updates actually in this separate scene, a little bit lighter. And the first one is our create and materials. You'll now see this is far more limited than it was before. We've had a serious cleanup of the defaults in the create menu. So we have OpenPBR, Toon, standard volume, which works out of the box for Pyro, principled hair, and incandescent. And also, when you double click, it also now defaults automatically to OpenPBR. So if I double click this, you'll see we now default to OpenPBR. But don't worry, if you still want to use, let's say, the standard material node, you can still come in and you can find these. So we still have this standard material node, and you could just come in and plug that in there. that's absolutely fine. We still have access to all of those nodes. We've just cleaned up that create menu. And some other little bits on here inside of your preferences and under the material tab, we have this material manager default material option. And auto is going to be, again, based on the renderer that you have selected, but for Redshift, it will default to OpenPBR. If you would rather, this is for when we double click inside of here and create a new material. If you'd rather have that standard Redshift option back, then don't worry, we can do that. And now it creates the standard material. Or if you want to create a tomb material by default, you can do. And now when we double click, it creates a tomb material for us. Like we said, auto is going to automatically connect to your renderer. So whether you have Redshift or standard here, it will default to either a standard material or a Redshift OpenPBR material. Okay, so those are three of the things. The next is something I know a lot of people have been asking for, and myself included. That is the ability to now convert our standard Redshift materials to OpenPBR materials. So I have these 4 materials here, again, all from the asset library. We have this substance material. I want to show you that it can be done with a substance material too. We have this fabric that's got, a bit going on, this plastic that's got some stuff going on, and then this wood that's doing a pretty standard texture map workflow. And this can be found under material tools. We have a convert and replace RS standard materials to OpenPBR. What this is going to do with the materials you have selected, it's going to convert them and replace them. So you'll no longer have the standard material ones. That will change to OpenPBR, and therefore it will update on your objects. But what I'm going to do, because I want to show you a comparison, is I'm going to not copy and paste the sun and sky. I'm going to copy and paste these materials. I'm going to then go material tools, convert and replace. So you'll see it's then replaced all of these. And if I select this, let me just show you. This was the original one, right? So we had the standard material node with all of these base properties. Now, if I click this one, you'll see it's the exact same setup, but we now have OpenPBR, the OpenPBR base properties, which is our recommended default now, but it does all of our lovely connections for us. So you don't have to worry about rebuilding your materials. And what's even better is I'm going to show you. So these ones were the standard, these ones are OpenPBR. I'm just going to show you the example of these, and you can see how they are identical. So if I do fabric, this is why I wanted to do a few different materials for you, just to really see, it's easy for me to show you one material. I could have found one that matched, but here is just 4 random materials that I chose from the asset library that have slightly different varying properties. And we can see how those look, I would say, identical, for the standard or the OpenPBR. The only little thing that is worth mentioning is when you're working with anisotropy, which is the stretching of our reflections. Let me just pull this along, put that there. That's the stretching of our reflections, right? So we increase our anisotropy, and then we can rotate our reflections around. If we then change this and we go to material tools, convert and replace, you'll notice that we don't actually have the rotation option in OpenPBR. So all you need to do is grab that surface tangent, and let's just input this. So command click, add that in there, and then you can actually then rotate around this way from the mesh or from like the user tangent, and you can control and define the X, Y, and Z of that. So that's the only thing that is, I believe, worth mentioning when we do this conversion process. If you're doing anisotropy workflows, for example, brush metals, just bear that in mind, that you will then need to do an additional step to make sure they look more accurate. Okay, so I know we've only got a few minutes left, but those were the material updates. And that is just the first in a series of updates to Redshift for, OpenPBR and texturing, and there'll be more things coming soon, including things like texture displacement. So this is a new feature that came a couple of releases ago, and people loved it. And what we've done is we've listened to the feedback and we've made some additional improvements and updates to hopefully make the workflow of using texture displacement even better for you. So I've just got some simple shading here with a Maxon noise connected to displacement. I've got a cube, a primitive cube, and I'm just going to apply my displacement onto here. And I've already got the Redshift object tag connected, so I'm controlling displacement locally. And what we'll remember is from this first pass of texture displacement, we had some issues of edge breaking based on the normals on our mesh. And this is basically one of the issues that has been resolved. So within the tag, we now have edge handling options. And so this was the default vertex normals, but what we now have as a new default, I just set this back just to show you this at first, is now smooth normals. So we can now see what it does is it creates gapping in between those edges, and it actually tries to then fill them and create a more accurate looking displacement, which, as we can see in comparison to how it was before, it's much better. So those are one of the updates. What we also have is if I come into here and add some displacement to here, is within the material tag. So a lot of existing Cinema 4D users love working with the Cinema 4D material projections within the tag itself. If you don't want to worry about UVing and you want to do it in the projection, that's how a lot of people like to work in Cinema 4D. So now with displacement, you can actually control the different projection types as well, and it's going to work correctly with displacement, texture displacement, which it didn't before. You had to use vertex displacement. So we can come in and we can see, we can adjust these and control our displacement projection. This can also be done in the UV context projection node. So if I set that back to UV mapping and we do this relatively quickly, again, a new feature that came in recently, UV context projection, very cool, powerful node. The way I found this works for now is you actually have to connect this node to both the noise and the output, which is normally not the workflow, but for displacement, it seems to be. And then we can come in and we can do it this way. So you can work within the tag if you'd like to, or you can work within the UV context projection. And this is going to allow you to tile more of your displacement and more of your textures and maintain a lot more resolution within the texture of displacement itself. Okay, so let me remove this and let's go and add some displacement on here. This is one of the final updates to texture displacement, is the possibility to now use polygon selections for your displacement. So I've got one set of displacement here, which is Naki, and then I've got another one, which is cell displacement. And I've got a little polygon selection here that I've already made, just nice and simple. And so what we can do is we can drag and drop that into my second displacement, and we can now have different displacements on our different polygon selections within our materials, and it's not going to mix and add them and combine them. And again, these are the updates to texture displacement specifically. So we're talking about texture displacement, not vertex displacement. And then finally, before we wrap things up, this is a very cool scene by the amazing Ian Robinson that Saul has shared with me. And what we have in here is, this is controlled and textured by UDIMs. So if I find the scene, I can just show you the textures. So we have these UDIMs here. And we're now able to, of course, texture using the UDIMs, but most importantly, we're now able to do this texture displacement with UDIMs with this this new texture displacement option. So this is a very cool update that gives you a lot more power and control and a lot more resolution within your displacement. Like we've seen the power of texture displacement and how much faster it can be within a scene as well. So yeah, lots of cool little updates there that have come to both materials, specifically OpenPBR and texture displacement.
This is amazing. Great stuff. Thanks for showing all that and for streaming together with me again.
I know it's been good. Yeah, it's been great. Lots of cool things come in. So yeah, will come in today. So everyone has access to all of this cool stuff now that we've had the luxury of playing with and making cool, fun scenes.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I'm just noticing that the autograph and regind stream is starting like now. So definitely check that out. And yeah, I hope to see everybody soon play with the features. And please remember, there are files in the, well, not in the video description, but a link to the files in the video description that you can use. And yeah, with that, I'm going to release you all, we are going to release you all so that you can have a look at the other stream about autograph and regind updates. All right. Have fun, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.